I was born at 9 in the evening on Thursday, the 31st of January, 1907, the second day of the waning moon, the second lunar month, the year of the horse, in Ba Nung Song Haung, Double Marsh Village, Yang Yo Phab Township, Muang Samsib District, Ubon Ratchathani Province. This was a village of about 80 houses, divided into 3 clusters: the little village, the inner village, and the outer village. In the outer village was a temple. That was the village in which I was born. Between the villages were 3 ponds, and surrounding the villages on all sides were scores of giant rubber trees. To the north were the ruins of an ancient town with 2 abandoned Buddhist sanctuaries. The spirits there were said to be so fierce that they sometimes possessed people, causing them to go live in the spirit shrines. From the looks of the ruins, I'd say they were built by the Khmers. My original name was Charlie. My parents were Pao and Phwai Nariwong. My grandparents on my father's side were named Janthari and Sida, and on my mother's side, Nantasen and Day. I had 5 brothers and 4 sisters. About 9 days after I was born, I became such a nuisance, crying all the time, that my father left home for a good while. 3 days after my mother left the fire, I developed a swelling on my head and couldn't eat or sleep for several days running. I was an extremely difficult child to raise. Nothing my mother or father could do ever seemed to satisfy me. My mother died when I was 11, leaving my father, myself, and a little sister whom I had to care for. My other brothers and sisters by that time had all grown up and gone off to find work, so there were just the 3 of us at home. Both my sister and I had to help my father in the rice fields. When I was 12, I started school. I learned enough to read and write, but failed the elementary exams, which didn't bother me in the least, but I kept on studying anyway. At 17, I left school, my main aim in life being to earn money. During this period, my father and I seemed always to be at odds with each other. He wanted me to start trading in things that seemed wrong to me, like pigs and cattle. Sometimes, when it came time to make merit at the temple, he'd stand in my way and send me out to work in the fields instead. There were days I'd get so upset that I'd end up sitting out alone in the middle of the fields, crying. There was one thought in my mind. I swore to myself that I wasn't going to stay on in this village, so I would only have to put up with things just a little bit longer. After a while, my father remarried, to a woman named May Thip. Life at home became a little more bearable after that. When I was 18, I set out to find my elder brother, who had found work in Nongsaeng, Saraburi province. News had reached home that he had a salaried job with the irrigation department, which was in the process of building a water gate. So in October of that year, I moved in with my brother. Before long, though, we had a falling out, because I happened to mention one day that he ought to make a visit back home. He was dead set against going, so I left on my own, heading south, looking for work. At the time, I felt that money ranked in importance next to life itself. Although physically I had now come of age, I still thought of myself as a child. When friends would ask me to join them in going out to look for women, I wouldn't be the least bit interested, because I felt that marriage was for grown-ups, not for kids like us. From what I had seen of life, I had made 2 resolutions that I kept to myself. 1. I won't marry until I'm at least 30. 2. I won't marry unless I have at least 500 baht to my name. I was determined that I'd have both the money and the ability to support at least 3 other people before I'd be willing to get involved with a woman. But there was yet another reason for my aversion to the idea of marriage. During my childhood, at the age when I was just beginning to know what was what, if I saw a woman pregnant to the point where she was close to giving birth, it would fill me with feelings of fear and disgust. This was because the custom in those parts when a woman was going to give birth was to take a rope and tie one end to a rafter. The woman, kneeling down, would hang onto the other end of the rope and give birth. Some women would scream and moan, their faces and bodies all twisted in pain. Whenever I happened to see this, I'd have to run away with my hands over my ears and eyes, and I wouldn't be able to sleep out of both fear and disgust. This made a deep impression on me that lasted for a long time. When I was around 19 or 20, I began to have some notion of good and evil, but it wasn't in me to do evil. Up to that point, I had never killed a large animal, except one, a dog. And I can remember how it happened. One day when I was eating, I took an egg and put it in the ashes of the fire. The dog came along, found the egg and ate it, so I jumped up, grabbed a club, and beat it to death on the spot. Immediately, I was sorry for what I had done. How on earth can I make up for this sin, I thought. So I found an old book with a chant for sharing merit that I memorized. I then went and worshipped the Buddha, dedicating the merit to the dead dog. This made me feel better, but my whole train of thought at that time was that I wanted to be ordained. In 1925, when I was 20, my stepmother died. At the time, I was living with relatives in Bang Len district, Nakhon Pathom province. So toward the end of February, I returned home to my father and asked him to sponsor my ordination. I arrived with about 160 baht in my pockets. Soon after my arrival, my elder brothers, sisters, brothers-in-law, etc., flocked around to see me, and to borrow money, to buy water buffaloes, to buy land, to use in trading. I gave them all they asked for, because I was planning to be ordained. So in the end, out of my original 160 baht, I was left with 40. When ordination season arrived, my father made all the necessary arrangements. I was ordained on the full moon day of the 6th lunar month, Visakha Puja altogether. There were 9 of us ordained that day. Of this number, some have since died, some have disrobed, leaving only 2 of us still in the monkhood, myself and a friend. After my ordination, I memorized chants and studied the Dhamma and monastic discipline. Comparing what I was studying with the life I and the monks around me were leading made me feel ill at ease, because instead of observing the duties of the contemplative life, we were out to have a good time, playing chess, wrestling, playing match games with girls whenever there was a wake, raising birds, holding cockfights, sometimes even eating food in the evenings. Speaking of food in the evenings, even I, living in this sort of society, joined in, as far as I can remember, 3 times. One day I felt hungry, so in the middle of the night I got hold of the rice placed as an offering on the altar and ate it. 2. Another time, I was invited to help deliver the Mahachard sermon at Wat Nuan Daeng in Phai Yai, Big Bamboo Township. It so happened that my turn to read the sermon came at 11 a.m. By the time I had finished, it was afternoon, so it was too late to eat. On the way home, I was accompanied by a temple boy carrying some rice and grilled fish in his shoulder bag. A little after 1 p.m., feeling really tired and hungry, I told the boy to show me what was in his bag. Seeing the food, I couldn't resist sitting right down and finishing it off under the shade of a tree. I then returned home to the temple. 3. One day, I went into the forest to help drag wood back to the temple for building a meeting hall. That night, I felt hungry, so I had a meal. I wasn't the only person doing this sort of thing. My friends were doing it all the time, but were always careful to cover it up. During this period, the thing I hated most was to be invited to chant at a funeral. When I was younger, I would never eat in a house where a person had just died. Even if someone living in the same house with me went to help with a funeral, I'd keep an eye out, after he returned, to see from which basket he'd eat rice and from which dipper he'd drink water. I wouldn't say anything, but I'd be careful not to eat from that basket or drink from that dipper. Even after I was ordained, this habit stayed with me. I was 19 before I ever set foot in a cemetery. Even when relatives died, even when my own mother died, I'd refuse to go to the cremation. One day, after having been ordained a fair while, I heard people crying and moaning in the village. Someone had died. Before long, I caught sight of a man carrying a bowl of flowers, incense, and candles, coming to the temple to invite monks to chant at the dead person's place. As soon as he entered the abbot's quarters, I ran off in the opposite direction, followed by some of the newly ordained monks. When we reached the mango grove, we split up and climbed the trees. And there we sat, perched one to a tree, absolutely still. It wasn't long before the abbot went looking for us, but he couldn't find us. I could hear him losing his temper in his quarters. There was one thing I was afraid of, though, the slingshot he kept to chase bats from the trees. In the end, he had a novice come look for us, and when the novice found us, we all had to come down. This is the way things went for 2 years. Whenever I looked into the books on monastic discipline, I'd start feeling really uneasy. I told myself, if you don't want to leave the monkhood, you're going to have to leave this temple. At the beginning of my second rains retreat, I made a vow. At present, I still sincerely want to practice the Buddha's teachings. Within the next 3 months, may I meet a teacher who practices them truly and rightly. In the beginning of November, I went to help preach the Mahachard sermon at Wat Ban Noan Rang Yai in Yang Yo Phab Township. When I arrived, a meditation monk happened to be on the sermon seat. I was really taken by the way he spoke, so I asked some lay people who he was and where he came from. They told me, "That's Ajahn Bot, a student of Ajahn Mun." He was staying about 1 kilometre from the village, in a forest of giant rubber trees, so at the end of the Mahachard fair, I went to see him. What I saw, his way of life, the manner in which he conducted himself, really pleased me. I asked him who his teachers were, and he answered, "Phra Ajahn Mun and Phra Ajahn Sao. At the moment, Ajahn Mun has come down from Sakon Nakhon and is staying at Wat Burafa in the city of Ubon." Learning this, I hurried home to my temple, thinking all the way, this must be what I've been waiting for. A few days later, I went to take leave of my father and preceptor. At first, they did all they could to dissuade me from going, but as I told my father, I had already made up my mind. "I have to leave this village," I told him. "Whether I leave as a monk or a layman, I've still got to leave. My father and preceptor have no rights over me. The minute they start infringing on my rights is the minute I get up and go." And in the end, they let me go. So at 1 in the afternoon, on a day in early December, I set out, carrying my necessary belongings, alone. My father accompanied me as far as the middle of a field. There, when we had said our goodbyes, we parted ways. That day, I walked, passing the town of Muang Sam Sib, all the way to Ubon. On my arrival, I was told that Ajahn Mun was staying at the village of Kutlad, a little over 10 kilometres outside the city. Again, I set out on foot to find him. It so happened that Phra Barichut, a former district official in Muang Sam Sib, who had been dismissed from government service and was moving his family, drove past me in his truck. Seeing me walking alone on the side of the road, he stopped and offered me a ride all the way to the Ubon airport, the turn-off to Kutlad. Even today, I think of how kind he was to me, a total stranger. At about 5 in the evening, I reached the forest monastery at Kutlad, where I learned that Ajahn Mun had just returned to Wat Burafa. So the next morning, after breakfast, I walked back to Ubon. There I paid my respects to Ajahn Mun and told him my purpose in seeking him out. The advice and assistance he gave me were just what I was looking for. He taught me a single word, Budo, to meditate on. It so happened that he was ill at the time, so he sent me to Banthar Wang Hin, Stone Palace Landing, a very quiet and secluded area where Phra Ajahn Singh and Phra Mahapin were staying along with about 40 other monks and novices. While there, I went to listen to their sermons every night, which gave rise to 2 feelings within me. When I thought of my past, I'd feel ill at ease. When I thought of the new things I was learning and experiencing, I'd feel at peace. These 2 feelings were always with me. I became friends with 2 other monks with whom I stayed, ate, meditated, and discussed my experiences, Ajahn Kongma and Ajahn Sam. I kept at my meditation all hours of the day and night. After a while, I talked Ajahn Kongma into going off and wandering together. We went from village to village, staying in the ancestral shrines, until we reached my home village. I wanted to let my father know the good news, that I had met Ajahn Mun, that this was the life I was looking for, and that I had no intention of ever returning to live out my life there at home. I'd once told myself, "You've been born a person. You'll have to work your way up to be better than other people. You've been ordained a monk. You'll have to try to be better than the monks you've known." Now it seemed that my hopes were being fulfilled. This is why I went home to tell my father, "I've come to say goodbye. I'm going for good. All my belongings I'm handing over to you, and I'm never going to lay claims on anything of yours." Although I hadn't made a firm decision never to disrobe, I had decided never to let myself be poor. As soon as my aunt heard the news, she came to argue with me. "Don't you think you're going a little too far?" So I answered her, "Look, if I ever disrobe and come back to beg food from you, you have my permission to call me a dog." Now that I had made a firm decision, I told my father, "Don't worry about me. Whether I stay a monk or disrobe, I'll always be satisfied with the treasures you've already given me. 2 eyes, 2 ears, a nose, a mouth, all the 32 parts of the body. It's an important inheritance. Nothing else you could give me could ever leave me satisfied. After that, I said goodbye and set out for the city of Ubon. Reaching Wang Tam, Cave Palace village, though, I found Ajahn Mun staying in the forest there, so I joined him, staying under his guidance for quite a few days. This was when I decided to reordain, this time in the Dhammayuttika sect, the sect to which Ajahn Mun belonged, in order to make a clean break with my past wrongdoings. When I consulted Ajahn Mun, he agreed to the idea, and so had me practice my part in the ordination ceremony. When I had it down pat, he set out, with me following, wandering from district to district. I became extremely devoted to Ajahn Mun, because there were many things about him that had me amazed. For instance, there were times when I would have been thinking about something, without ever mentioning it to him, and yet he'd bring up the topic and seem to know exactly what my thoughts had been. Each time this happened, my respect and devotion toward him deepened. I practiced meditation constantly, free from many of the worries that had plagued me in the past. After I'd stayed under Ajahn Mun's guidance for 4 months, he set the date for my reordination at Wat Burafa in the city of Ubon, with Phra Panyabisara Thera, Nu, of Wat Sra Patham, Lotus Pond Temple, Bangkok, as my preceptor, Phra Ajahn Feng of Wat Thai, Ubon, as the announcing teacher, and Ajahn Mun himself as the instructing teacher, who gave me the preliminary ordination as a novice. I was reordained on May 27, 1927, and the following day began to observe strictly the ascetic practice of eating only 1 meal a day. After spending 1 night at Wat Burafa, I returned to the forest at Stone Palace Landing. When Ajahn Mun and Phra Panyabisara Thera returned to Bangkok to spend the rains retreat at Wat Sra Patham, they left me under the guidance of Ajahn Singh and Ajahn Mahapin. During this period, I followed Ajahn Singh and Ajahn Mahapin on their wanderings through the countryside. They had been asked by Friar Trang, the Prince of Ubon, to teach morality and meditation to the people of the rural areas. When the time came to enter the rains retreat, we stopped at Oxhead Village Monastery in Yasothon district. It so happened that Somdet Phra Mahawirawong, the ecclesiastical head of the northeast, called Ajahn Mahapin back to the city of Ubon, so in the end only 6 of us spent the rainy season together in that township. I was very ardent in my efforts to practice meditation that rainy season, but there were times I couldn't help feeling a little discouraged because all my teachers had left me. Occasionally, I'd think of disrobing, but whenever I felt this way, there'd always be something to bring me back to my senses. One day, for instance, at about 5 in the evening, I was doing walking meditation, but my thoughts had strayed toward worldly matters. A woman happened to walk past the monastery, improvising a song. I've seen the heart of the tide-tie bird. Its mouth is singing, tide-tie, tide-tie, but its heart is out looking for crabs. So I memorized her song and repeated it over and over, telling myself, it's you she's singing about. Here you are, a monk, trying to develop some virtue inside yourself, and yet you let your heart go, looking for worldly matters. I felt ashamed of myself. I decided that I'd have to bring my heart in line with the fact that I was a monk if I didn't want the woman's song to apply to me. The whole incident thus turned into Dhamma. A number of other events also helped to keep me alert. One night when the moon was bright, I made an agreement with one of the other monks that we'd go without sleep and do sitting and walking meditation. That rainy season, there were 6 of us altogether, 5 monks and 1 novice. I had made a resolution that I'd have to do better than all the rest of them. For instance, if any of them were able to get by on only 10 mouthfuls of food a day, I'd have to get by on 8. If any of them could sit in meditation for 3 hours straight, I'd have to sit for 5. If any of them could do walking meditation for an hour, I'd have to walk for 2. I felt this way about everything we did, and yet it seemed that I was able to live up to my resolution. This was a secret I kept to myself. At any rate, that night I told my friend, let's see who's better at doing sitting and walking meditation. So we agreed. When I do walking meditation, you do sitting meditation. And when I do sitting meditation, you do walking meditation. Let's see who can last longer. When it came my turn to do walking meditation, my friend went to sit in a hut next to the path where I was walking. Not too long afterwards, I heard a loud thud coming from inside the hut, so I stopped to open the window and peek in. Sure enough, there he was, lying on his back with his folded legs sticking up in the air. He had been sitting in full lotus position, gotten sleepy, and had simply fallen backwards and gone to sleep. I was practically dropping off to sleep myself, but had kept going out of the simple desire to win. I felt embarrassed for my friend's sake. I'd hate to be in his place, I thought, but at the same time was pleased I had won. All of these things served to teach me a lesson. This is what happens to people who aren't true in what they do. At the end of the rains, the group split up, each of us going off to wander alone, staying in cemeteries. During this period, it seemed that my meditation was going very well. My mind could settle down to a very refined level, and one very strange thing that had never happened before was beginning to happen. When my mind was really good and quiet, knowledge would suddenly come to me. For example, even though I had never studied Pali, I could now translate most of the chants I had memorized. Most of the Buddha Guna, for instance, the Kulaparita and the Abhidhamma Sankippa. It seemed that I was becoming fairly expert in the Dhamma. If there was anything I wanted to know, all I had to do was make my mind very still, and the knowledge would come to me without my having to think over the matter. When this happened, I went to consult Ajahn Kongma. He explained to me, the Buddha never studied how to write books or give sermons from anyone else. He first practiced meditation, and the knowledge arose within his heart. Only then did he teach the Dhamma that has been copied down in the scriptures, so the way you've come to know within yourself like this isn't wrong. Hearing this, I felt extremely pleased. At the end of the rains, I thought of going to see my father again, because I felt that there was still a lot of unfinished business at home. Setting out on foot, I reached Ban Noandang, Red Hill Village, where I stayed at the ancestral spirit shrine. When the village people found me alone in the forest there, they sent word to my father. Early the next morning, he came to see me, having set out from home in the middle of the night. He had prepared food for me, as best he knew how, but I couldn't eat it, not even to please him. I was sorry I couldn't, but I was now following the monastic discipline strictly, and it's a matter that should be followed strictly. The rule against eating flesh from an animal killed specifically for the sake of feeding a monk. Afterwards, whenever I thought about it, I'd start feeling so sorry for my father that tears would come to my eyes. When he saw that his son the monk wouldn't eat the food he had prepared, he took it off and ate it himself. When he had finished, I followed him back to my home village, where this time I stayed first in the cemetery, and then later in another spot in the forest, where the spirits were said to be very fierce. I stayed there for weeks, delivering sermons to people who came from many of the surrounding villages, and I did away with a lot of their mistaken beliefs and practices. Belief in sorcery, the worship of demons and spirits, and the use of various spells that Buddhism calls bestial knowledge. I helped wipe out a good number of the fears my friends and relatives in the village had concerning the spirits in the ruins near the village and the spirits in the spot where I was staying. We exorcised them by reciting Buddhist chants and spreading thoughts of goodwill throughout the area. During the day, we'd burn the ritual objects used for worshipping spirits. Some days there'd be nothing but smoke the whole day long. I taught the people in the village to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, to recite Buddhist chants and to meditate instead of getting involved with spirits and demons. There was another practice I had seen a lot of in the past that struck me as pointless, and so we figured out a way to wipe it out. The belief that the ancestral spirits in the village had to eat animal flesh every year. Once a year, when the season came around, each household would have to sacrifice a chicken, a duck, or a pig. Altogether, this meant that in 1 year, hundreds of living creatures had to die for the sake of the spirits, because there would also be times when people would make sacrifices to cure an illness in the family. All of this struck me as a senseless waste. If the spirits really did exist, that's not the sort of food they would eat. It would be far better to make merit and dedicate it to the spirits. If they didn't accept that, then drive them away with the authority of the Dhamma. So I ordered the people to burn all the ancestral shrines. When some of the villagers began to lose nerve for fear that there would be nothing to protect them in the future, I wrote down the chant for spreading goodwill and gave a copy to everyone in the village, guaranteeing that nothing would happen. I've since learned that all of the area around the ancestral shrines is now planted with crops, and that the spot in the forest where the spirits were said to be fierce is now a new village. As I stayed there for quite a while, teaching the people in the village, word began to spread. Some people became jealous and tried in various ways to drive me away. One day, 3 of the leading monks in the area were invited to give a sermon debate. I was invited as the 4th. The 3 monks were Phra Vasisanthorn, the ecclesiastical head of Muang Sam Sib district, Preceptor Louis, the ecclesiastical head of Amnar Jeroen district, Ajahn War, who had knowledge of Pali. And then there was me. The night before the debate, I told myself, it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out battle tomorrow. Whoever takes you on, and however they do it, don't let yourself be fazed in the least. A lot of people went to hear the debate, but in the end, it all passed peacefully without any incident. Still, there were a number of monks and lay people in the area who, thinking I was nothing but a braggart, kept trying to create trouble and misunderstandings between other monks and me. One day Nai Chai, claiming to represent the householders in Yang Yofab township, went to the offices of the district official and denounced me as a vagrant. This simply increased my determination to stay. I haven't done anything evil or wrong since coming here. No matter how they come at me, I'm going to stick it out to the very end. The outcome of it all was that the district education officer had no authority to drive me out of the village. I told the people that if there was any more of this sort of business, I wouldn't leave until my name had been cleared. One day, the district official himself came out to check up on some government business and spent the night in the village. The village headman, a relative of mine, told him about all that had been happening. The district official's response was this: "It's a rare monk who will teach the lay people like this. Let him stay as long as he likes." From that point on, there were no more incidents.